The general in charge of U.S. forces in Africa says units loyal to Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi have little will and have little capability to take back rebel-held areas. That is after a weekend of American and coalition airstrikes, missile launches, including a direct hit on Gaddafi's complex in the capital city of Tripoli. I want to bring in retired General Wesley Clark live with me now from Little Rock, Arkansas. And General Clark, were you at all listening to my conversation with Congresswoman Norton in D.C.? I mean, she brought up a whole host of questions and concerns over how, Congress was told about the mission to the mission itself. Did she have merit in her questions?
Yes, these are important questions. There's three circles that have to be tied together right here as this policy is unfolding. And this is not unusual. These things happen in fast-moving operations. First of all, the U.S. itself has to figure out the difference between what the President says is the objective and what the UN Security Council resolution says. And if we have a further reaching objective, then how do we get there? And who authorizes it? And then secondly, we've got to bring the American people and the institutions of government together on that. And then third, with our allies, we have to be together. So press reports today say, for example, that Turkey, a NATO ally, is not approving the use of NATO as a command and control agency, perhaps because Turkey has a lot of guest workers in Libya, and they're very concerned about the safety of their people in Libya if NATO authorizes this and they're part of that decision.
Well, let me just back up for a moment and just talk here scenarios and approaches to what's happening in Libya. You have the president, and he reiterated this as he was speaking in Chile as part of his question and answer, saying it is U.S. policy specifically that Gaddafi must go, that he must give up power. But then you have General Ham, American four-star general today, saying, he, not necessarily an ideal situation, but he could see Gaddafi staying in office. So help me understand, what is the end game? What's the most likely scenario here?
Well, this has to be defined and worked out. The practical way forward is to use the leverage of international legal authority to do an investigation of Gaddafi's crimes in Libya, bring him up on charges, and then declare him an indicted war criminal. At that point, he can't legitimately, even by international law in any way, be in charge in Libya. He can be arrested, brought to The Hague for trial. And that's the easiest way forward. But if we don't use that, then we could also call for democratic elections. But something has to be done in the near term about what's going on in Misrata, whereas intelligence agencies are apparently running wild, right, arresting people and so forth. That's a tricky part of this. And then the United States doesn't want to be in a position where its policy is more far-reaching than the legal authorities underpinning that policy that have been received from the UN Security Council, because we wouldn't have any effective way of implementing our policy in accordance with international law. So it's a little tricky. The administration, I'm sure, right now is scrambling to pull all of this together. It can be put together. It just has to be, and we're watching it in real time unfold here.
We are watching it. Actually, you were in a double box. These are live pictures there in Tripoli. And if we can show Nick Robertson, I know Nick Robertson is there in Tripoli. We've been seeing some tracer fire, some anti-aircraft fire there over the capital city. And Nick Robertson, if you're there, can you just tell me what you're seeing, what you're hearing?
Yeah, Brooke, about 3 or 4 minutes ago, we heard what sounded like a couple of distant heavy explosions. And then reacting to those explosions, we heard a lot of anti-aircraft gunfire, a lot of tracer fire. There's some more going up in the sky right now. I'll just be quiet for a moment. So what you're looking at there is the anti-aircraft gunfire that's being fired brilliantly in the sky right now. Quite heavy anti-aircraft gunfire at this moment. There were several strikes to the city's port here just about 2 hours ago. We heard another couple of explosions a few minutes ago. It seems to indicate that something else has been targeted. Now the anti-aircraft gunfire is putting up tracer rounds.
I saw it light up over there, way over there, and then it took them a while to chase it.
Nick Robertson, I think we were having a tough time hearing you over some of the anti-aircraft fire there. Guys, let's keep this live picture up. And General Clark, I want to bring you in. If you can just give me a little bit, I know you don't know specifically what's going on. You can't give me a play-by-play per se, but what is the priority here in terms of these airstrikes? Are they taking out, command and control forces, taking out communication, radar, tanks? What's happening?
Sometimes it turns out that when you strike a target, you hit what you shot at, but it didn't turn off the radar or shut down the communications, or they alternate. They activate an alternate antenna. So maybe we're coming back tonight to clean some of these targets up that are still on the air in some way. And the anti-aircraft fire is basically desperation fire. The aircraft that release these bombs are far above the range of this artillery to reach into the air. If they're trying to shoot at missiles or bombs, it's very unlikely that you can hit a falling bomb and do anything to it, or a cruise missile coming in very, very low and very fast. And so a lot of this is just uncoordinated morale-boosting fire.
Yeah, I know this is highly, highly technical and trying to determine how they do hit their target. I have more questions for you, General Clark, and more questions for Nick Robertson in Libya. Got to get a break in. We're going to continue this conversation in 2 minutes. Stay here.
Big deal.
Back here live, we've been watching some of the tracer fire over the night skies over Tripoli in Libya. And as we've been talking with our senior international correspondent there on the ground who's seeing and hearing all of this, Nick Robertson, we also have retired General Wesley Clark there sort of walking us through what could be happening. And I think it's important to point out here that they can't specifically, per this UN Security Council Resolution 1973, they cannot target Gaddafi. This is all about making sure and protecting the civilians within Libya. And so what they can do is target some of these, some of the radar and the communications equipment, military tanks, etc., but they cannot go after Gaddafi specifically.
That's correct, under the reading of the UN Security Council resolution. But as it's been said, if he's in a command center, then he could be hit. And there's nothing to keep the targeting from going all the way to the top on the command centers to break up the integrated air defense system. Typically, there are regional air defense headquarters that coordinate radar locations and air-to-air missiles, and they're tied together into a national headquarters somewhere, and that's tied into the National Command Authority. All those are legal targets. And by the way, I should say this, that the U.S. lawyers who are experts in this will be looking at every target to make sure it's in line with exactly what's authorized by the wording of the UN Security Council resolution. And
I know it has to be in line with Resolution 1973, and I know you saw yesterday one of his command centers, Gaddafi's command centers, was hit. And I'm just curious if that also could be a way of rattling him a little bit.
Well, he should be rattled. He's up against the most powerful military.
Oh, we lost him. Let me bring in Nick Robertson, who was there hearing and seeing those the tracer air fire over Tripoli. And Nick, just talk to me about the last 24 hours there. Thanks to you, Nick. Also, my thanks to retired General Wesley Clark. By the way, he wrote an op-ed for USA Today, so you can read about his 3 key questions, CNN.com/opinion.